Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ad Nauseam. I'm Pat from Manticore Marketing, and today we have our very own ABM expert, Rob Elbaz. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I just wanted to talk about ABM today, so brought you in. So let's get things started. Rob, first things first, what exactly is ABM?
So ABM, account-based marketing, if you're not sure what that stands for, it's a way of targeting an account. In this case is typically one customer or prospective customer of yours. Every customer is thought of as an account. Think of it in sales terms. You have the accounts that you're trying to land, trying to close, trying to upsell or cross-sell. And you're doing marketing based account by account. So you hear about terms like one-to-one ABM, one-to-few ABM, one-to-many ABM. One-to-one is really the classic idea of ABM, where you're making one campaign for one account, one customer.
Okay, great. And just off the bat, what's the big difference between like taking an ABM approach versus kind of the traditional marketing approaches or digital marketing approaches that you see with a lot of other businesses?
So a lot of B2B companies, especially business to business companies, will do demand generation. Most companies will do some sort of brand marketing where they're trying to get their brand name, their brand values, what they stand for, what they do, how they can help companies, how they can help people out there. So typically a B2B company will start with demand generation where they explain what their offer is. They try to make it enticing. They have maybe a promotion, maybe a free trial, maybe an ebook to learn more about it. And they're trying to get people to take interest in this because those people have a need for the service that the business is offering. We're a marketing agency. We let people know that we do marketing, and companies that need marketing come and reach out to us, and we discuss and find out if there's a fit there, and we try to work together. That's your typical type of marketing where it's really open to anyone, and you're letting your audience figure out if your services your offering is right for them or not, and you're waiting for them to come back to you and raise a hand. With ABM, you're looking a lot more at who's a really good fit for your services, and you're not waiting for them to hear about you. You're going out and telling them about you, and you're telling them why you're a good fit, and you're being very deliberate about it, very precise about it, and you're doing it in such a way that hopefully they can't ignore you.
Perfect. And one of the analogies I always hear or that I like to use when talking about ABM is as a marketing team or as a business, let's just say that we're fishing out in the open ocean. And typical marketing, you're going to throw the biggest net that you possibly can, you're going to catch as many fish as you can. And those fish are going to be a big mix of small fish, medium fish, and you might land a whale here and there. But what ABM is you're going out there with like a harpoon. You've got your one shot and you're hunting that big whale down. You're going after your Moby Dick. You're taking that approach. So everything that you're doing is really catered towards that one customer that you're going after, or pool or subset of customers you're going after.
Absolutely. You're not fishing with a net. You've picked your bait very specifically for the fish that you want, because that's a bait that they can't resist, and it's only them that's going to want to take that as well. So you've produced something that is going to work for your specific fish and not for the whole sea.
Yeah, and I think ABM also has a little bit of a misconception. It can be something that comes off as trendy, or that people don't really approach in the right way or have a misconception about. How would you really explain what ABM is and what it isn't?
So I think one of the reasons for the misconception about ABM is that there are a lot of very expensive tools that help accelerate ABM and that enterprise companies will gravitate towards to make their ABM programs work. And these tools are fantastic, and they do give companies a lot of data and a lot of power to go out and run their campaigns. But just because these tools are targeted at enterprises doesn't mean that tools also don't exist for smaller and mid-market businesses. It doesn't mean that SMBs are completely shut out from ABM. ABM can be as simple as finding a company that you want to work with, figuring out what their favorite snack is, and offering it to them with a nice note for their break room so that, they call you up for a thank you, and you get to say, by the way, we have something that might really help your business if you're interested in talking, and hey, I'll bring more of those donuts next time.
And I think just to segue off that and to continue there is I think a lot of people think like ABM is for big tech. You've got these huge customer lists, a very niche product. You've got like a massive marketing budget. But I think there's different ABM approaches. There's kind of a way of doing ABM that is available for a lot of different businesses. On this podcast, we talk a lot about small, medium businesses, and it is a very good option if you're doing it right. If you're not just taking kind of the blanket approach or the approach that a larger business might be taking, you can really get a lot out of ABM, especially in the B2B world where you have these pretty segmented audiences and a well-defined audience. And just to kind of throw it back your way, what are the types of businesses that you think would succeed or would benefit the most from using an ABM approach or going with ABM as a channel or a strategy?
I think any business that knows the type of clients that they want to work with already has a foundation for ABM. Any business where you might be doing research on the types of clients that you want to work with, where you're producing cold call lists for BDRs and SDRs that are going out and trying to generate business for you. That's already, in a sense, a type of ABM activity. You're defining your ideal customer profile. You know what types of companies are a fit and that aren't a fit. And probably you're going that extra mile. Okay, these companies fit in our profile, but half of them already have a solution. So we're going to cut them out. And half of them aren't really mature enough yet or aren't problem aware enough yet. So we're going to help make them feel that problem by setting them up with some thought leadership assets that we send their way, letting them know that our solution is for companies like them. And then this very small sector of companies that we've researched, these are the ones that we need to go after right now because they're actually just waiting for our solution and they don't even know it yet. And they're going to be so happy when we bring it to them.
Yeah, a lot of the times, one of the biggest things is they don't even know that they have that specific problem. And you're there to both present them with a solution, but you have to educate them at the same time. There's typically longer decision-making periods, larger buying circles, a lot of different moving parts within these businesses. And it's not as simple as like, hey, let me just run one ad and hope that they click on, subscribe or sign, a large contract for a couple of years. It's a little more complex than that. And taking the ABM approach is just a lot more catered towards that type of business.
Absolutely. It's about trying to understand where your prospects are in that buying cycle, in that sales cycle. If they need education, ABM means you're going out and you're offering them that tailored education. If they know they have that problem, but they don't know your solution is out there, it's letting them know that your solution is there to meet exactly their problem. ABM is exactly that. It's very targeted, very deliberate marketing. You're saying something because you know it wants to be heard.
Exactly. And before diving too much into the nitty gritty, and because I do want to talk about like different approaches of ABM and different elements of it, I'm curious to know, like in the ABM approach, what are the different things that you're typically working on? Like you're not just running kind of Google ads or building a social media post. I know that one of them is like you're catering your marketing towards that audience. So there's the discovery stage, a lot of research, there's like knowing who your audience is. But when it comes to the strategies and kind of the what you're delivering, it has a lot to do with like the content, the messaging, the approach. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. When we think about ABM campaigns, we think about direct outreach, so email, direct mail, gift giving campaigns, meeting people at events, going to events that you know your targets are going to be at, companies are going to be at, and having a conversation with them, setting up a dinner, setting up a panel that you're going to invite them to. These things all count as, in a sense, an ABM tactic. And then there's the advertising side of things. So Google Ads typically doesn't work as well, although you can layer those ABM audiences into that platform as well. LinkedIn is a channel that comes to mind right off the top because you can target by company. Platforms like 6 Sense and Demandbase are also ways to target by company, and there are other programmatic platforms that are more open and don't require licenses that you could work with as well to target people by their company, by their job role. If you're going out and using tools like Apollo to find contacts and buying committees at companies and getting email addresses, you could build these audiences directly and you could then use them potentially on Facebook, Google Ads, and that message that you want to send when you have hundreds of people at a company and let's say a marketing department that spans across the country, you can send those all one single ad tailored to their company with their branding and your branding kind of crisscrossed together with an offer that's just for them. And you could run that on a wide variety of ad platforms and build a landing page that, again, is just for them.
Yeah. And I think a big part of ABM is that like initial research that you're doing. So yes, you might have like a bunch of different tools, but you can also, if you're doing it at a smaller scale, like make sure that you identify those clients that you're going after and look for things that are kind of at a deeper level. It's interesting to know what their tech stack is, the type of employees they have at their company, where they're at in their business journey. There's so many different elements that can kind of open up those talking points when you're running your content and your advertising and different elements.
You could kind of start to feel almost like a spy agency where you're opening up a file on every company, and that file has the information that you're gathering on them, and what they need to hear from you to become a partner, to become a client in the future, or to increase the activity that they have with you. Every piece of data, and we're in such a data centric world right now. If it's being properly filed, if it's being properly organized, even if you're not running ABM right now, if you have all the products that a client has ordered from you in the past listed out, that could tell you about what they might be looking for in the future. If you can go through as a marketing agency, we have calls all the time with our clients, and they give us lots of pieces of information that we obviously record in our call notes and we put together so that when the time comes, we can say, hey, you were talking about this. If this is still a need, we're developing this service that you might be interested in. Comes back to ABM. So it's about having an ABM mindset where you're gathering that information, you're doing that research, and maybe you're not using it today, maybe you're not using it tomorrow, but it's been filed away and it's been saved so that everybody who needs to have it, access to it at your company, can access it and can leverage it. Whether
Yeah.
that's a marketer or a salesperson or a customer success person.
Yeah, and I think we often think about ABM as like a specific strategy or like a tactic or kind of a direction that you take marketing. But I think you can also see ABM as just, like you said, a mindset, but an approach that you implement into all of your marketing practices, especially when it comes to those SMBs or the B2Bs or kind of you're working in more niche markets, is everything I'm doing should be catered with a little bit of an ABM mindset. You're going to have your brand campaigns. You're going to have your positioning and different things like that are a little bit more of a blanket for the masses, but everything that you're doing in terms of like the collaboration between marketing and sales, the way that you're building out your product, the way that you're talking to your customers, and then it kind of expands into everything, whether it be event marketing, whether it be your content, whether it be social media. If you take an ABM approach, you can really build out some strong strategies using kind of those techniques.
And I think that's exactly it. Having that ABM mindset will open up ABM opportunities for you, where if you're gathering that knowledge, you're filing that research, you have that technology stack that's recording which companies are coming to your website, where they're showing interest, you're giving yourself opportunities to later run successful ABM campaigns.
Yeah. And I think also like looking at your marketing to go from contact-based marketing to really like what the name is account-based marketing. You're not actually, you are, but you're not going for individuals. You're going for actual accounts. So you're not catering your messaging and things like that for kind of the personal interests of the individual. You're going after like, what does this account need? What does this business need? So it's less of, you know, me as a marketer, I'm looking for this one thing. It's like, no, my entire business is in need of this solution. So I'm catering everything towards that.
And there's a couple of ways to think about that as well, because I've seen one-to-one ABM campaigns where that organization was broken down into segments. The finance department needed to see one thing. They needed to see that the cost was not going to be higher than an alternative, that there was going to be an ROI coming from the product. The IT team needed to know that it was going to play nicely with all their existing tech stacks, the software that was being marketed. The sales and marketing team needed to know that it was going to work and what they were going to be able to do with the product at the end of the day. And each of those teams received their own set of ads, received their own set of assets and case studies that paired with them to give them the confidence that each of them needed individually to accept this as a group. Yes, it is about thinking about that company as a whole, their needs, but it's also about breaking down within that company who needs to hear what. and why?
What I like about ABM and what's actually fun as a marketer is there's like you can kind of move the scale. There's like a spectrum of what you can do with ABM. You quickly mentioned it, but there's different approaches. There's like you can go one to one, or you can go one to few, you can go one to many. And because it is dependent on like the resources that you have, how much budget you have, how big of a company you have, how much research you can do. But if I have all the resources in the world, I can get extremely granular, like you said, about going into different departments and tackling individual needs of the individual department. Even like, the C-level versus the director versus the software engineer are all going to have different needs. I've worked at a company in the past where you're targeting the product people, you're targeting the engineers, you're targeting the salespeople, and you're just approaching it in different ways. And if you manage to convince a handful of them when they're together in the room and they're giving, they're your champions for different elements of your product or solution, the trust that you build with them is so much better than if you just have like one point getting across the entirety of the business.
And I think that trust is a big part of ABM is you're showing these accounts that you've listened to them, that you've understood their needs, and you're there to help them. And ABM, all marketing is really about that. And all business, I think, at the end of the day is about that. You got into business to offer a solution to the market, to bring to market something that is going to help push this world forward for companies, in your area, in your country, all across the world, whatever it is. And you should be excited to tell people about that. And ABM is just about telling exactly those people that you built your service or solution for, that you did it and that it's there for them and that they're missing out by not taking advantage of it and at least having a conversation with you.
And with ABM, you need to take into consideration that the majority of the time, the decisions are made over a long period of time and by a large group of individuals. So there's a big buyer team. So you have to reach a lot of individuals. You have to convince them over a long period of time. Nobody is doing an overnight decision or I see, one email or one ad and I'm purchasing right away. There's like that long process of building trust, which means ABM is going to have a lot of different touch points. I'm curious to know, like, in your head, what are those different touch points that are used within an ABM campaign? I know you mentioned a few in this conversation, but I'd love for you to break it down into more detail.
So I'll explain what an ABM dashboard has looked like for us in the past and how that tracks all these different touch points. An ABM dashboard, typically you're measuring your accounts and their engagement with the assets that you're putting out. So if you have ad campaigns, every time someone from that account clicks, converts, even an impression, for example, to them is typically counted. And that's going to let you know how aware this account is now of your brand, whether or not they've been engaging with your messaging, whether or not when they come to the site, they engage with the assets there. You'll also have email that will go out and you'll measure whether or not that's been open, responded to, if that's been clicked. You'll measure whether or not you've had conversations, and this could be at live events, and you have to log these manually and attach it in the right place, or via a meeting that's logged either automatically from your calendar or again attached to the right place. And all of these touch points add up and recency matters. So if you had a conversation a year ago, it's a little bit less relevant than a conversation you had a week ago. If an asset was downloaded yesterday, it's weighted higher than an asset that was downloaded 6 months ago. But all of these touch points are typically given a score. And then these scores are measured against, if you're running 10 one-to-one campaigns because your sales team wants to target these accounts, but they could realistically only actively work on 3 or 4 of them, you'll score them against each other so that the top 3 or 4 are rising to the top, and the sales team knows who they have the best chance of closing a deal with.
Yeah, and to go off of your conversation, your mentioning of the sales team, it's very important when you're running an ABM campaign to get involvement with your whole organization. You can't run an ABM campaign in a silo because of those multiple touch points, because you're having specific conversations with specific accounts. You want to get your sales team involved. You want to get your product team involved. You want as many of those people to be, subject matter experts. You've got technical people coming in and helping talk about the product. You've got marketing people helping, with the branding, with the advertising, building that trust. There's a lot of different moving parts, but can you do ABM without a sales team?
It's, Potentially possible, and think of it as demand generation. If you're running a demand generation campaign and that lead goes in, who is that lead being handed off to if it's not a salesperson? And it would be the same question you would ask for ABM. If you're running ABM and maybe the lead is not raising their hand, but they're showing interest and you're picking up on this with the ABM tools you have in place, who's there to follow up on that? If a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, maybe it makes a sound, maybe it doesn't. That depends on who picks up the ball for your organization.
I like that. And we often talk about, and we brought it up, that ABM is doable for small, medium businesses. How would ABM work for like a 5 to 10 person company versus like a 50, 100, 1,000 plus company?
Well, certainly if you don't have as many resources, then the assets that you're going to be putting out there have to be a little bit more streamlined. You might not make 20 landing pages for 20 one-to-one campaigns. You might start with a single one-to-one campaign. Once that's up and running, you would take the blueprint that you've developed and use it for another account and another account. Certainly, you would want to keep, I imagine, your advertising budget lower, which is actually what ABM is really made for, because you're only putting out your impressions and your advertisements towards a very small set audience. There's a higher cost per ad that gets seen, but there's fewer people to see them. So overall, you pay less. You'll pay more for each impression, but you'll pay less for each targeted impression, if that makes sense, because you're only putting those ads out to the people that you want to see them.
And there's often a lot of tracking involved. You're getting a lot of data. So after you run one campaign, you have so much information to go off of to get quick learnings, to repeat it, to, like you said, use that blueprint to go and try again with whether it be another customer or, repeat the same process 6 months later with that same target company.
That's it. And I mean, even when you think the difference between a one-person marketing team and a 50-person marketing team, that doesn't mean that a 50-person marketing team can necessarily get out 50 times as much. Each marketing person is going to have their specialty. They're all going to have to work together, and they're going to look for programmatic shortcuts. And this is what one-to-many is. It's a type of programmatic ABM campaign where maybe you have one landing page and it dynamically changes based on who's detected on that site. Maybe you're advertising a lot more your solution towards everyone in a certain vertical, in a certain ICP, rather than everyone who you've identified as being in market. But when you're doing these things as a larger team, you might be typically using bigger tools, more expensive tools to get this done. You might have probably a fancier reporting setup because you have more data coming in, but essentially your campaigns will still look the same as that one-person marketing team. You'll just be doing it at a different scale. And I think that small marketing team, if they concentrate on doing it, they can be just as successful pound for pound.
And in terms of utilizing tools, what are some of the types of tools that you think are a non-negotiable when running an ABM campaign? And let's say your budget starts to grow or you're a larger company. Are there any kind of tools that you'd say you should start looking at once that ABM grows?
There are definitely tools that are nice to have. I think the visitor identification tools that help you de-anonymize traffic to your website become so important. And this can be at the person level or this can be at the company level, because this is the tool that really tells you if your targets are engaging with your efforts. But at the same time, if we're talking about that one-person marketing team who is sending out personalized emails, personalized gift, is going to events, and is tracking all their efforts in a spreadsheet, I think ideally you would like to have a true CRM for that. Ideally, you would like to have the email software and the gifting software that will help you keep this organized and give you neat reports. But, somebody who has that type of organizational skill that could still put it together, yes, it can, in a sense, live in a spreadsheet. Should it? Probably not. But, again, a one-to-one campaign, you're talking about activity with just one account. You could keep those daily logs. You could keep your notes. And if it is a spreadsheet that you're used to, then power to you.
And sometimes you're limited and you use what you can, right? I want to elaborate too on the visitor identification tools and the anonymizing your traffic. I'm curious to know from your end, what are the benefits of using those tools? And like as a marketer, how do you use them on a day-to-day basis? I kind of want to dive deeper into that.
So we have a client, for example, they have individuals that kind of act as their own sales rep. They develop their own books of business and they have their own individual pages on the company website. So when they're going out and meeting people and letting people know that, this is what I do, this is how I could help, your company, then they go back and they get an alert. Somebody came to your page on your company's website and oh, it was from this company and that was somebody that you were just speaking to. Now you know that that person has taken an action to follow up on that meeting, has shown some interest, and you have a signal that if you're meeting 100 people and you only have time to reach out to 10 of them, you're going to reach out to those 10 that came back to your website and took a closer look at you. So this is how those tools work. And it could be on an individual level. We have our website as well, and we're always checking if, the companies that we're putting our marketing efforts towards are coming back to our website. We write blogs about ABM marketing. We write blogs for local businesses, and we love to see when people reach those pages, if they're on target and if there's some way that we could open a conversation and take that little bit of intent that we saw and fan that flame and grow that into a customer.
I want to do a mini segment here. As the ABM expert at Manticore, I'd love to hear and you could just give it as like a generic example, but your SMB playbook, doing ABM without that enterprise level budget, what would that look like over the span of like 3 to 6 months? And what does it entail?
So there's two sides to ABM. There's the research side and then there's the execution side. So they kind of work hand in hand. While I'm getting started on the execution side, we're making sure that the technology is there on the website, those tools that we just talked about that de-anonymize your traffic and tell you which companies have visited your website. We would be making sure that's there. We would make sure that our website works properly and that we have landing pages to bring our eventual prospects. And we would be just making some decisions about who we want to run this campaign towards. What does that vertical look like? Where are these companies geographically? How much business do they do? What are their needs? And we would come up with that list of clients, that list of prospects rather, that we want to be targeting. And then once we've drawn that initial list, we would narrow it down by doing some additional research. Which of these people can we contact? Which of them seem to be already served, have a real need, don't seem to be in market? The initial data that we got is no good, and they actually do a completely different type of work. So we'd be narrowing that down and finalizing that list. And at the same time, now that we know which type of prospect we're going after, we're going to be developing our offers and our messaging to fit them. We're going to make sure that the product that we have for them is actually something that we want, that it's priced attractively, and that we have some proof, some social proof that it works and that we could show that off. So case studies and white papers, documents to that extent. Once we have our list narrowed down, we're going out and looking for individuals. Who is it at that company that can make this type of decision or has to be involved in it? How do we reach them? What are their email addresses if we could find it? What are their phone numbers if we could find it? How do we reach them through advertising on social media like LinkedIn and Facebook? Can we typically you wouldn't send messages to people's homes, you would send it to their offices, to their attention. Sending to someone's home is a little bit intrusive, but depending on your relationship with them, ABM isn't always about finding a new client. Sometimes it's about expanding an existing client. So if you have been working with someone for a few years and you want to send them a nice gift and let them know about a new product line that you have, that could be appropriate. But again, typically you would be getting all those contact details so that you could send them messages, so that you could advertise to them. You would be trying to figure out their event calendar, either by finding out which events they're going to be at or by finding out which events that they would likely be at and kind of scouting those. And you're developing at the same time, you're taking the messaging and the offers that you've built in the previous step and you're turning them into assets, landing pages with co-branding so that you have your branding as well as your target branding on there. We love working with kind of a mix of branded colors, including logos where we can. We've done ABM campaigns where, for example, the company is working with their target company in one location, but not in other locations. So they're telling that story, that success story of the first location to get more and more adoption from within that company, for example. So we're building out those types of assets. And then we're building our go-to-market plan. How much are we going to spend? Where are we going to spend it? What dates are we going to send messages and emails? What events are we going to show up to, looking for our targets? And once that is out in the world, we're measuring our results and wondering, are these people coming back to our website? Are they opening our emails and replying to us? Are they booking their own meetings? Are they taking our phone calls now? And has this been successful? And, based on the messages we receive on the execution side, we're doing a little bit of fine tuning and we're planning the next campaign for the next target.
Love it. Love it. I wanted to chat quick too about some ABM tactics that we've both put in place or that we've done either at previous companies or at our current agency. And I want to start things off in my past working with kind of taking an ABM approach. Two of my favorite campaigns or tactics that I've put in place using the ABM approach were micro events and involving ABM contacts or target accounts into our own content. So what I mean by that is I've been, and we're doing now a podcast, but I've hosted a podcast, produced a podcast in the past where we would invite target customers to speak about their own expertise, their subject matter experts about the subject that we're kind of involved in terms of the company, but without being too salesy, and brought them onto a webinar, brought them onto a podcast and get them to talk about their product. And as we're helping showcase them to their target audience, to our target audience, we're also getting a chance to discuss the challenges within the industry, how our product serves what you're able to, or your problems, your kind of trends within the industry. It was a really great way to kind of build that connection while also providing value to not only that potential customer, but to a larger audience. And the micro events was just such a great way to get through to customers that are really hard to get through the door, that aren't really spending as much time online in a way that is a little bit easier to get to them. And you're building that trust. And, these people will come to events on multiple occasions. You're building that trust, you're building rapport. And it tended to work really well because it kind of opened doors for other marketing tactics, other conversations to happen. And I think those are my two favorite ways to get those people in the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Having a personalized invite go out, a small intimate dinner, a fireside chat, inviting someone onto your podcast, onto your webinar, having them write a blog article for you, writing a blog article for them, anything to kind of strengthen that connection, build that bond, make it that much easier for your call to be taken the next time, your email to be read the next time you send it out. You're not always using ABM to sell something tomorrow. Sometimes you're using ABM to, secure a relationship, to strengthen a relationship so that when the time comes, the prospect that you're talking to will listen to you and you'll get that reaction from them, whether it's positive or negative. Maybe they don't need your solution. Maybe what you're going to get from them instead is an honest reaction as to why they don't need it, where before they would have just brushed you off or told you that, yeah, this is great, but never sign a contract or a check. Having someone that you could turn to for honest feedback is incredibly valuable as a business as well. And, good ABM marketing, I think just in general, good customer service, good salesmanship, good marketing is about taking care of your prospects, even if it doesn't always mean financial gain for your company.
Exactly. And who knows, it might open other doors like referrals. It might open other doors like building trust across the market, and they end up being a champion of yours, even if they're not an actual customer. And it's nice to think about ABM as I'm marketing for the long term. I'm not just trying to sell you today. I'm not doing a pitch. I'm not trying to, get your business right away. I'm building that trust. I'm taking a long-term approach. So that's really going to shift things in terms of the way that you're reaching out to them, the discussions you're having, the messaging that is getting across.
And to kind of take a sports analogy, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. In this case, sometimes you close a deal and sometimes you learn a little bit more about your prospect, what will help you the next time.
Exactly. I love it. Perfect. Did you have anything else that you wanted to go over in terms of ABM that you don't think we tackled today?
I think the main thing to remember about ABM is it's very approachable. There's ways to do ABM that cost almost nothing. Again, a handwritten note, walk in into a company with a tray of coffees and a nice, we'll give a plug to one of our clients here, a nice My Grandma's coffee cake, which is the story behind that is actually the person who ended up with that company was bringing so many cakes to his prospects for a different type of business that he opened a bakery just to keep baking all these cakes because it's such a great way to start a conversation and get in the door. So it doesn't take much, but it does take attention, it takes research, and it takes that willingness to understand, who you're going to be talking to and what really makes them tick, what it is that they're going to want to hear from you and, not wasting their time.
Or maybe we should start baking and, develop a whole new branch of our outreach team.
I don't think it would ever make it out of my kitchen, unfortunately, but we'll see.
Yeah. It'll take some time. All right, Rob. I think we can end it there. I appreciate you jumping on.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Have a good one.
Thanks.